Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this Digital Earth Africa webinar that's focused on capacity development on the use of Earth observations across Africa and how Earth observations can drive better development outcomes and align with sustainable development agendas for the continent. My name is Aditya Agrawal. I will be moderating the first half of this webinar. I'm a senior advisor on Digital Earth Africa and founder of D4D Insights, and it's a pleasure to be with you again during our second webinar that we are now hosting. Matt, can you go to the next slide, please? We have a great set of speakers for you today, a great panel. It's going to be a wonderful discussion, really talking about this very important topic around how to actually build holistic capacity development on the effective use of Earth observations across the continent of Africa. We'll start with an introduction from Adam Lewis, who's the Managing Director for Digital Earth Africa, have a presentation on an initial 6-week training course that's been developed by the Digital Earth Africa team, and go into a specific use case by Stella Mutai on how Digital Earth Africa was used on a coffee farming application in Kenya. And then Joost Teuben from ITC at the University of Twente will give us a presentation on the capacity development program being developed by the Digital Earth Africa program. We will then switch over to a panel that's going to be moderated by my dear friend Andiswa Mlisa from the South Africa National Space Agency, with an amazing panel including Thigo from Thunderbird School of Global Management, Andre Nonguierma from the Economic Commission, Tideane from the Africa Union Commission, and Phebe Odour from RCMRD. So we thank you very much for your participation. Looking forward to a good discussion. And Matt, can you go to the next slide, please? And just a few housekeeping rules for this webinar. For all speakers and panelists, we've already gone over the instructions around muting unless you're speaking and keeping the video off unless you're speaking. We'll ask you to turn on all your videos for the panelists when we get to the panel. And importantly for the attendees, we do have a full agenda, so we are going to try to get to some questions that are posed by the attendees. There's a Q&A button that you should see within the Zoom application that allows you to submit these questions. Myself as the moderator, based on the timing around the presentations, we'll try and select some of these questions to pose back to the presenters during the webinar. And most importantly, enjoy yourself. We're looking forward to a great discussion. So with that, I would like to first pass it over to my good friend, Adam Lewis, who is the Managing Director for Digital Earth Africa. Adam, over to you.
Good morning, Aditya. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for that kind introduction. My name is Adam Lewis. I'm the Managing Director of the Digital Earth Africa establishment team charged with getting the capability established in Africa. Next slide, please, Matt. I have just a couple of slides to talk to. The first one you may be familiar with is this program is about leveraging data from these things, Earth observing satellites, to put it to good use for people. And it's great to have so many people on this evening. We've got over 124 participants with us already. Next slide, please, Matt. Digital Earth Africa is quite unique. It is a whole of continent approach to using data from satellites. The idea was first proven in Australia, where they now run the Digital Earth Australia program, and we're able to leverage their experience and technical expertise to Africa, which is much bigger and a bigger challenge. The idea is that we know these data have great capability, and by taking a continental approach, we can allow anybody, regardless of sector, to track changes across the African continent in unprecedented detail, whether they're for academia or for government or private sector innovators leveraging the data. The data form a dense time series. There are millions of satellite images that we already have, and that grows daily. And by analyzing those as a time series in the right way, you can provide insights into a range of issues as listed there. We can see water and therefore we can see droughts. We can see the color of the soil. We can monitor coasts. We can support agriculture. if we know how to analyze these data through groups like yourselves. And ultimately, the key thing about Digital Earth Africa is it's going to be a sustained capability based and built in Africa for Africans, which is why our capacity development side is so vital to the program. And it's great to have Joost and the ITC team supporting us on that as a partner to DE Africa, and they'll be talking soon, as was indicated. Next slide, please, Matt. So the broad concept here is that we have observations from satellite that form a dense big data time stream. And if we can do the right things with the technology and the institutions and the people that we have, we can convert that into real-time information that's useful to a whole range of sectors: land managers, resource development companies, statistics bureaus, agricultural technology innovators, policymakers. In the middle, we have the technology, which is the open data cube, analysis-ready data coming from free and open satellites from the US and Europe, making up these rich time series of information. We can make those into continental products, showing the maps of water. We're now working on a crop area mask for all of Africa. And those products, like the data, become free and open for everybody to use. And final slide. This is guided vitally by a vision and principles. So the program has a vision to provide a routine, reliable, and operational service using Earth observations to deliver decision-ready products that enable policymakers, scientists, the private sector, society to address social, economic, and environmental challenges on the continent and develop an ecosystem of innovation that crosses all sectors. We have vital key principles which are summarized in these boxes here. This is about open and free data. Data that can be used and shared and interoperated whilst respecting privacy and integrity questions. It's about an operational capability, not a research activity. So it's an operational continental-wide service, the way a weather service might operate. It has to be sustained and draw on domain expertise in Africa to sustain. It's got to be accountable, so it has to be responsive to the needs of African people and users, and responsive to those means that it's a nimble and agile program. So it's not hardwired in the way we're developing it. The future steps of development will be guided by yourself and others. And it's inclusive. We have a very active gender and diversity policy, which is about inclusiveness, and we're inclusive across multiple sectors as well. So we're looking to foster collaboration across data types, and as I've said several times, across sectors: private sector, education sector, government sector, and NGO sector. So today is a critical webinar for us. It's a second in a series we put on, and I thank Aditya and the team for doing that. And we're really looking forward to the speakers in the excellent panel today. I thank everybody in advance for their input, and look forward to rejoining or re-speaking, I think, at the closing remarks. Thank you, Aditya, and over to you.
Great, thanks very much, Adam, for that overview, and looking forward to further inputs from you through the webinar. I'd like to now pass it over to Ken Mubea and Edward Boamah, who are going to give a presentation on a training course that's been developed by the team so far. So Ken, I think you'll be presenting first, so over to you.
Thank you very much, Aditya. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this good presentation. My name is Kenneth Mubea, the User Engagement Manager with Digital Earth Africa Establishment Team. At DE Africa, we started the program, and the key thing about the program is to introduce it to the users in Africa. So DE developed a 6-week training program. Next slide, please. So this program includes pre-recorded videos, tutorials, and manuals, which are hands-on, and the user is able to access the material over on this link, which is free and open for all. And the users are able to complete 6 sessions, and they get a certificate of completion. And in that, this started sometime in August, September, and I've made follow-ups in terms of having weekly sessions, which started in September, every Wednesday at 11 a.m. And we took a break in December, and now we are back in January. So for more information, you can write to us on the training at digitalearthafrica.org. Then to maintain the momentum of the training, we have a WhatsApp group, which we maintain with the users and get more updates. In the next slide, you'll see the contents of this wonderful course. Next slide, please. So it covers the introduction to the platform, the map user interface and the notebooks, and also we introduce the datasets in session 2. Then the users are able to create various composites, and 4, you have different indices responding to vegetation and water analysis. And then we have already a continental product from the water observations from space, which can be used. And we introduced an extra session on the Python basics, which has been very good and good response from the users. So in the next slide, as a summary, is that we've been able to move the users from the Africa Regional Data Cube, which started sometime in 2018. These were primarily from 5 countries in Africa: Ghana, Kenya, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Tanzania. And we've made this much more open and improved the tool that we provide the support and the use of the various notebooks responding to the various use cases and various priorities of the different countries. We have trained over 45 participants from various institutions in Africa with a good mind on the agenda, as we have the agenda strategy in place so that we don't leave anyone behind. Among the continental products we have, was introduced by Adam, we have the water observation from space, which gives you the variability of water and very useful for the training and development of the various use cases. And currently we are finalizing on the crop mask, and our users are expanding even on this panel. I'm happy to see more participants have joined this webinar, and I hope to see you in joining the training and writing to us to tell us more about how we can support you, as we are very keen on the development of the use case, so as we make the Africa we want. And I'll hand it over to my colleague, Edward Boamah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Please, the next slide. So I'll be talking about the outcomes of the 6 weeks program that we had with our users. Currently, we have over 300 sandbox users. That's people who have registered to utilize the platform in the platform. And through these users, they have been able to utilize most of the notebooks that we are having in the platform. So through that, we've been able to develop use cases for various countries. That's actually aiding them to inform decision makings in their various sections that we are working with them. Through this also 6 weeks program, we're able to also create a community of people whereby we have every week, we have a live session to discuss with them how best we can utilize this satellite imagery that we have at our disposal. Also, we have a WhatsApp group where we use to communicate among us and share ideas, and also develop ideas that we can use to actually make use of the platform. Next slide, please. So from this outcome, these are some of the use cases that can be found on the platform. That's the sandbox and also the web interface. We have the water extent notebook, the crop phenology, vegetation change, and coastline changes. So with the water extent notebook, it makes use of one of the continental products, that's the water observation from space, in which actually helps to determine the amount of water that has been observed throughout the year. Aside that, we have other notebooks such as the Bend area mapping. Also, you have the coastal erosion and the crop health. All these notebooks have been developed in the notebook, in which we also work closely with the users to co-design them and also shape them, so that at the end of the day, they'll be able to use it to inform the decision makers within the country. Next slide. This slide actually shows some of the use cases that we have that has been developed using the platform. So one of them is the water observation from space in monitoring the Okavango Delta. Also, there's a project in Kenya, that's the assessment of coffee farming in Muranga. That one also used the notebook to develop it. Then also the Lake Baringo use case was the water quality, and also the vegetation change from Tanzania. All these use cases were developed using the sandbox from Digital Earth Africa. Next slide. So the users that we work with, that we have been able to co-work with them to develop these use cases, also have also been able to make impact of these use cases within their country. So as you can see, the first slide talks about Benedict Mugambi from Tanzania National Bureau of Statistics. He's engaging with some of the regional commissioner on how they've used the digital health platform to engage and make this decision making within the country. And also Stella Mutai has also done a great work with the system for vegetation phenology, planting and harvesting. Stella will give us more details on his work later on in the webinar. So all these things were possible because DA is co-designing and working together with most of the African countries through the training sessions that we have. And it's something that all of us really like, because at the end of the day, the system comes with us for us to utilize it at our own end. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Edward and Ken. And I think as you'll see on the slide right now, there's a couple of links there on how to get to the GitHub side and the Slack channel for posing questions and other things to the Digital Earth Africa team. Ken, Edward, I'm gonna ask you both one question, just in relation to the training course that you've had users go through so far. What has been one opportunity and one challenge that you've identified going through this process that's going to support the development of the broader program?
I think I can go first, Aditya. The first challenge was working remotely in terms of COVID. So most of the users are working home, and most of the times you have the webinars, you're busy somewhere in a room hiding somewhere. So keeping this continuous momentum with our WhatsApp group, we've been able to maintain the regular meetings as well as follow-ups specifically on specific areas. And also the opportunity here is that this is among the first technologies we have in Africa where we are trying to move from the desktop technology to web-based and to respond more to policymakers. So having worked with the Tanzania National Bureau of Statistics, I've seen the value of moving things from the desktop to the policymakers and communicating this more to many people, like being an evangelist in Africa. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ken. Edward, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Okay, thank you, Aditya. So most of the challenges was, I think Ken has actually talked most of it, and also data challenges also a problem, especially if people were working from home and also to join on the platform. But along that, what we've actually seen is most people or users were able to come on board and share their use cases and what they really wanted to do with Earth observation. And that was something that was really amazing, and using the platform to achieve that.
Yeah, thanks, Edward. And I think that that's been really kind of an exciting element of this training program, this live training sessions that the team has been able to put together, where a number of different use cases are being discussed and explored, and different types of ideation taking place and capacity being developed in parallel. So that's been exciting to see. So thanks again, Ken and Edward. And now I'd like to hand this over to Stella Mutai, who went through the training and as part of these sessions also discussed how Digital Earth Africa could be applied to coffee farming in Kenya. So really looking forward to hearing more about that. So over to you, Stella.
Hello, my name is Stella Mutai from Kenya. I work with IFAD, International Fund for Agriculture Development, as a geospatial consultant. And so here under the GMNE team. So below is a presentation that we did in coffee farming by satellite, and we were able to win the Special African Prize Challenge across Africa. And our main theme was to understand the use of Earth observation in monitoring coffee farming in Kenya, and mainly the use of Digital Earth Africa, how it enabled us to bring out the challenge clearly and solve it. Next slide, kindly. And so one of our major problems that we were facing as a company, or maybe in identifying, many farmers were experiencing a big hurdle in terms of identifying the kind of coffee plantations or the kind of coffee diseases that farmers experience. So most farmers used to end until the time of harvest estimation, and then they discover that their yield estimation is very low compared to what they were able to utilize. So what we did is determine how our use of earth observation would be key to policymakers, especially the government institution, and how it can be able to assist them in terms of identifying early detection of these diseases before losses by farmers, how it can be able to help also in financial support, because early detection will require less estimation compared to when you estimate it after there's yield estimation. And thus our solution was the use of Digital Earth Africa as a main hub. Next slide, kindly. And so in the use of Digital Earth Africa, we were able to access the opportunity in terms of accessing the difference in agricultural fields over time. And so when you look at this, this is just a snap view of the space connection of how Digital Earth Africa was able to solve. So we're mainly using Copernicus data, and we're looking at the African Open Data Cube, providing a hub. That's why it has the data, the infrastructure, and the apps which contain the notebook that were able to be used in our analysis. And thus, this was just a summary of a diagram of how our analysis was going to be used in terms of monitoring the coffee farming. Next slide, kindly. So through this data cube or data hub, we were able to do vegetation phenology, and this means that we were able to identify the greenest value in vegetation farms. So this is a central Kenya in Africa, where most of the coffee farming is done. So we were able to identify a few farms, and in those farms we were able to look at greenest value of every farm in time difference. That's a time series analysis of the peak seasons whereby coffee farming is highly done, and that's in the period of 2018 to currently to 2020. We were able to use our Sentinel-2 data, which was recently, so it was quite good for analysis. And equally in this particular type, we used Landsat 8. So based on what's available in Open Data Cube, we could also use Sentinel-2 apart from Landsat 8. Next slide, kindly. And then from our analysis, we were able to identify, we're able to look at, apart from the greenest value, we're looking at the variations. Why was this very particular to us? Because most of the time, the solution that Digital Earth Africa was enabling us is to identify the peak seasons at the start and the end of the season of the planting. And so once we get this analysis, we can be able to advise farmers which particular seasons are quite good for planting, which are the peak seasons, or what are the characteristics of peak seasons, and what are the characteristics of an end season, so that they cannot be able to consume much of their planting season during an end season of coffee plantation. And thus this were able to be fed into decision making, especially to the county governments, especially because they were the ones who highly provide financial assistance to the coffee farmers in the village level. Next slide, kindly. And so one of our use cases, and this was identifying why Digital Earth Africa is a competitive scale. One of the characteristics in our competition is understanding why is it that we decide to use Digital Earth Africa among other spaces in terms of imagery analysis. And these were our 4 key things that stood out. One was that because in terms of using Digital Earth Africa, there's no need to download any more data. That means that it's user access free, and it covers the whole of Africa. That makes our work easier. Number 2, also the same point of time to download images, because they are already pre-processed, so it saves your time. Number 3, the images are provided in a compressed and geocoded format, meaning that there are Python notebooks that are already have a training manual. And that is what I learned in my 6 weeks of the training. Whether you're a geospatial expert or not a geospatial expert, the training can be very comprehensive to a person who is in urban planning, to a person who is in land use planning. So it's a thing that combines GIS and non-GIS people together. Last but not least are the stakeholders that are going to be helped by this. If you look at the use of Digital Earth Africa, one thing that I've learned, especially being at IFAD, that it solves beyond just the problem of food security. This is because it provides assistance to people that I've seen even in terms of our 6 weeks training course and the classes that we have every Wednesday, is they use case studies from people from the education sector, people who are working directly with agricultural farms, people who are in the government sector. All of us have realized that the use of Digital Earth Africa is going to help policy making in one way or another, and it will directly affect our lives in one way or another. Yeah, and I think that is all. I think the last slide is just to thank Digital Earth Africa for the opportunity. Yes, this is just an overview. Thank you.
Stella, thank you so much. That was a very comprehensive presentation. And I really liked that last slide in terms of some of the opportunities that you outlined in terms of what this was able to do for your work. And I guess just my follow-up question to that would be, in terms of those points that you raised in terms of lower costs and more efficiencies, what did that mean in terms of the actual impact and how that might have been able to accelerate the outcomes that you were looking for as part of this project?
Oh, that's a very good question. When we were going through this competitive project, we didn't have time to do the analysis from the field, like going to the field to collect data and coming back to download images, because the time span was very short. And that meant that we needed a place or a platform whereby if the government needs to make a decision, maybe for example, to look at time series analysis that has occurred in the past 5 years within 2 days, we don't have time to download images and pre-process them. But if we look at what Digital Earth Africa has done, is that it has provided already Python notebooks that have already done that for us. So what it means is just need to understand the texture in the Python notebooks and see what is going to be applicable. And what helps even more essential is that within 5 or 10 minutes or even 20, based on how well you understand it, you can have your analysis. So that really meant a lot to me and to the users who use Earth or remote sensing a lot.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Stella. Really appreciate it. That's great work. And now I'd like to hand it over to Joost Teuben from ITC at the University of Twente in the Netherlands, who's going to give an overview of the capacity development program. So Joost, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Aditya, for this opportunity to present the Digital Earth Africa capacity development approach. And we also would like to highlight some of the achievements so far. So next slide, please. As already mentioned before, Digital Earth Africa offers an operational data infrastructure, making current and historical analysis-ready satellite data freely available and openly accessible. However, to have this infrastructure fully operational and to achieve an impact on a continental scale, the Digital Earth Africa team is fully aware that just explaining the platform or the technology and the data resources is not sufficient. Different strategies are needed to have the African Open Data Cube fully operational, and the endorsed capacity development strategy is one of them, and this is what we are going to present. Next slide, please. So Digital Earth Africa adopted a holistic approach to capacity development, which means that we address the needs of the individuals, and that means the staff members of the end user organizations, but we also would like to strengthen the capacities of the organizations themselves, and that we also have a look on the connections within the Earth observation ecosystem. So to do so, we apply a set of principles when developing the capacity development interventions, what we also call the strategic pathways. So co-design and creation, leveraging existing capacities, social inclusion, multi-stakeholder engagement, sustainability, demand-drivenness are some of the main principles of this holistic view on capacity development, as you can see in this figure. Next slide, please. So to apply this co-design principle, we decided to have this capacity development operational structure. We established the capacity development task team with over 24 members from several Digital Earth Africa partners, mainly coming from the African continent. And the capacity development strategy focuses on different target groups, each with specific needs and interests. So we can identify the end user organizations, we can identify the anchor organizations, or what we call the implementing partners. We will have a look at the private sector, the geo community at large, and all other international organizations working in the field of Earth observation. So for each of this specific target group, we have established subgroups to develop the capacity development interventions further. Next slide, please. So where are we standing now? The rollout of the capacity development strategy consists mainly of two phases. One is on strengthening the capacities of the implementing partners, the anchor organizations like FEGIST, AgriMed, RCMD, SSO, and CSE. And then the next phase will come, and that is on enhancing the capacities of the end user organizations in all African countries. So for the implementing partners, we are currently developing a training of trainers program, and that program addresses both the what, and that is mainly upgrading the Earth observation knowledge and skills, but we also have a look on the how. So sharing best practices, didactic skills, and tools when delivering the training to the end user organizations. We are fully aware that besides the technical content, we have to have a look on really get the engagement from all the participants in the different courses. Next slide, please. So summarizing where we stand now, the capacity development task team is operational. The implementing partners are fully engaged. A needs assessment has been performed, and we are working now on the training of trainers outline. This phase one concludes with a full-fledged implementation plan to strengthen the capacities of the implementing partners. And of course, the Digital Earth Africa monitoring, evaluation, and learning protocol, as well as the gender equity, diversity, and social inclusion strategy are mainstreamed in this plan. Next slide, please. So we shortly want to share some highlights of the implementing partners needs assessment we have conducted in preparation for the training of trainers program. And that assessment consisted of a desk study, personal interviews or group interviews we have done with the implementing partners, and a digital survey that we have sent around. Next slide, please. So to start with the challenges, what are, according to the implementing partners, the main challenges in introducing the Digital Earth Africa platform, the technology, the tools, etc. So first of all, the COVID-19 pandemic. It was mentioned already, which makes traveling almost impossible and forces us to explore suitable alternatives for all our capacity development interventions. Next, what we saw is that cloud computing technologies are not commonly known, and internet connectivity is limited in several regions within the African continent. So the differences in the needs of the partner organizations require a fit-for-purpose approach. So if there is not one fits all methodology, we really have to look at the specific needs of the different organizations. So the needs exist to offer both basic as well as advanced modules to cover the different gaps. The selection of the training participants is crucial, and their full commitment is required to put apart sufficient time to be able to join the sessions. And of course, this is always a challenge because it goes on top of the normal daily duties. As mentioned before, it is about training technical staff, but we also need to create awareness among the decision and policy makers to better understand the benefits of the open data cube technology and to provide the necessary support to the training participants. So these are some of the challenges presented by the implementing partners. Next slide, please, Matt. So some main conclusions and recommendations regarding the support to the implementing partners. It's about creating a broader awareness on the technology and benefits for decision-making purposes within the implementing partners, considering one single platform for learning and interaction, and promoting peer learning among the implementing partners by establishing a community of practice. Next slide, please. When it comes to the end users, there is a need to share domain-specific expertise among the implementing partners. This is mainly due to the different mandate they have. And by this, each implementing partner is capable of including the specific expertise in the training for the end user organizations in their region. We also have to look for a flexible modular training package to address the specific needs, and that the level of prior knowledge is taken into account. And finally, the training should be made available in different languages, mainly, of course, besides English, the French language. Next slide, please. Just to finalize my presentation, a general conclusion to end with. The implementing partners expressed their interest to learn more on training course development, e-teaching, on how to conduct capacity needs assessments, on how to monitor and evaluate the training, and how to learn from their own experiences. And finally, how to incorporate other Digital Earth Africa strategies, for example, the communication, partner engagement, and the gender strategies. So there should be an equal balance, again, I mentioned already, between the what and the how when it comes to the designing of the training of trainers program and the training of the end users. Next slide, please. And herewith I end my presentation. Thank you for your attention. This is the capacity development coordination team. Thank you.
Thank you, Joost. That's a great presentation. Thanks for that overview of the program. I'm going to invite my colleague, Andiswa Mlisa, onto the webinar now. She has a question to pose to you. Andiswa, you're on mute.
Oh, I put the other one on, you know. Thank you very much, Joost. That was an informative presentation, and in a way, my question to you sort of like leads into the discussion that we're soon going to be having with the panel, and it's a two-pronged question. One is what are the low-hanging fruits? I mean, you've worked in Africa for a while. ITC has seen lots of scholars coming from the continent into ITC. So I want to say that there is a level of knowledge that you have, and having been working through the capacity development strategy for Digital Earth Africa, have you identified what you would say are low-hanging fruits? And the second part of that question for me would be, you know, if you close your eyes and you go like, a success would look like this, what would success look like? Just very briefly, what would success look like to you? Thanks.
What should what assess?
Success.
Success, sorry, okay.
Yes, you're talking about sustained capability. What would that success look like?
Success is when you really see impact on the ground. I think that is the more important one. And for that, of course, there is a need not only to train people, hopefully I try to explain that, but you have to see it from a broader perspective. You have to support people, you have to support organizations, you have to have a closer look on the full ecosystem. So once we have addressed all those needs and we really see differences on the ground, and then I talk about reducing risks by ensuring food security, I think then we really, as a Digital Earth Africa program, have achieved a great success. The low-hanging fruits, I'm not sure what you mean by that, in which sense you want to see low-hanging fruits.
Well, I mean, like we're talking capacity development. So in a way, for me, that means that we're not starting from scratch. So what are we building on?
Okay. Now, of course, we build on a lot of experience and knowledge that is already available on the African continent. I think the challenge is that that expertise is not everywhere on the same level. So I think that when we start working on community of practice, that we really try to share what the expertise that is already available. We might call it the leveraging existing capacities. We can make use of all the knowledge and expertise already available. But that means that we have to create one single platform where we all can have tools, methodologies, training packages available, and have really that the African community in the driving seat when it comes to further implementation of this Open Data Cube technology.
Great, thank you so much, Joost. And so, Andiswa, I'd like to hand it over to you now. We're staying right on time, which is fantastic, to now moderate the panel.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Aditya. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, depending on which part of the world you're joining us from. So without further ado, I'm going to ask my panelists to please put their videos on so that we can all see them. And because we want to know who we're talking to. We've got an impressive lineup. I mean, like, I'm feeling honored actually to be talking to these to the guests that we have today. Mr. Tideane Ouattara from the African Union Commission, Nonguierma from UNECA, and Philip Thigo from Thunderbird, and also the government of Kenya, and Phebe Odour from RCMRD. So I'm actually just gonna jump in, because I think the presentations that we've received so far have given a nice introduction in terms of why we are here and on this session. And I don't want to take the limelight from my speakers in them sharing their insights with you. So I'm going to ask my speakers to introduce themselves, and in your introductions, and I want this to be just 1 minute, because people can read what your titles and your institutions are on the slide. So what I'm interested in is we saw in Joost's presentation that he talks to this sustained capacity development being about sustained capability. And I just want to know, what does that mean to you as an introduction? And for me, this sustained capability means zenzele. In Xhosa, this means support yourself. Right, zenzele. That's what sustained capability for me means. So I'm gonna start with Mr. Tideane Ouattara, because I want to see him, right? Because my screen here is not showing him. There he is. Yes, I'm gonna start with Tideane. Welcome, sir. You on mute. You on mute. The cows are gonna go up.
That is another story to sustain the capacity anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, thanks, Andiswa, and thanks to the organizers for inviting the African Union Commission to participate in this excellent event. For us, and for me personally, sustained capacity covers 3 areas: infrastructures and equipment, what I'm calling the asset. The human capital is the second one. And the third one is, what is the most important for me, also the financial resources. Therefore, infrastructure should be maintained, upgraded, improved, etc. We have to be really in the very good mode when we are dealing with the EO. The human capital, we should not only train people, but we should maintain them. We should utilize them very well, and we should be able to attract. Most importantly for Africa, we should develop a critical mass. Financial resource mobilization is very important. We should be able to have the necessary funding to be able to apply the EO for socio-economic development. Thanks.
Yeah, you see, people who are diplomats, they cover these issues just like that. This is what we're talking about here. Mr. Nonguierma, talk to us, sir.
Thank you, Andiswa, and good day, everyone. My name is Nonguierma, and I'm the chief of the Geospatial Information Management of the. Can you hear me?
We can now. We lost you just for a second, but you're back.
Oh, okay. I was saying that I'm the chief of the Geospatial Information Management of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, and we are based in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. From my standpoint, sustained capacity means a demonstrated organizational capacity to carry out training, education on a sustained basis, if I can say like that. I believe this is our institutions in Africa to demonstrate their ability to continuously provide quality training and with minimal external input, which means that we are able to maintain by ourselves training activity over a long period of time, let's say 15 to 20 or more years, with decreasing external support. From my point of view, a sustained capacity may be able to scale the capacity development from, I might say, local grassroots users to global. It means that there is a principle of subsidiarity there, where we follow all the different stages and steps, ensuring that those who are using, those who are producing, those who are developing are all trained at the same time in a seamless manner. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andre. I am absolutely looking forward to this discussion because I can see these insights coming through you, gentlemen. Mr. Philip Thigo, from a Kenyan perspective, what does sustained capacity look like?
Thank you so much. Philip Thigo, Senior Director for Africa for Thunderbird, but also at the Presidency on Data Innovation. I think I look at three things, and let me copy my colleague Tideane on this. One, I think sustained capacity or capability is really about mindsets, right? We must have a deliberateness in terms of how we invest our own resources. So I see that as key, because one thing is to collaborate, but then you must deliberately invest in this. And I talk about a value chain approach, not just specific areas that are easy, but we also must tackle the hard stuff. The second piece for me is we need to come through a systems approach. This silo mentality must go. So the kind of collaboration, so that thinking around collaboration that is looking at systems, even internally, that these silos, whether it's because Earth observations cuts across silos, whether it's ag, whether it's climate, whether it's environment, whether it's food systems, whether it's smart cities, and we're seeing this as a challenge. The third piece is because this technology is evolving all the time. Whether you invest or whether you collaborate, it means you must innovate. And so then how do we ensure that innovation is in our DNA? So that we either leapfrog where we can, or we innovate as much as possible, because again, resources are scarce. I'm sorry, we don't own any satellites. So how do we ensure that we continuously innovate? Thank you, Andiswa, back to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Philip. Last but not least, Ms. Phebe.
Thank you, Andiswa. So in introduction, I support activities for the Sub-Saharan and Southern Africa project as a thematic lead, and I also support the AfriGeo Secretariat as a point of contact. So we may have those capacities. For me, when we talk about sustained capacity, what comes to mind is three things. One is the transferability of this capacity. How do I use the knowledge that I have to other people to teach them to have the same skills? The second thing that comes to mind is the translatability of this capacity. So I have this information, how do I use it to solve everyday problems that countries are facing, and how do I transform this, which is my third key. So the transformability is more or less the impact that comes with the solutions out of this capacity that we have gained. So once we have those three P's, we believe we will have a sustained capacity.
Thank you very much. I absolutely missed the memo because no one told me that when we hear sustained capability, we must come up with three things. I only came up with one. So I do feel like the memo went away without me getting it at all. Phebe, I'm gonna come back to you. I'm gonna start with you on this question, and I hope your connection is gonna be good to us. We know that Earth observations data and satellite data are highly technical. And people, when you say you work in for the space agency or you work with space data or Earth observations, they imagine that you're this intelligent and high IQ, highly specialized individual. Yet we know that the potential for having a big impact for national development needs is there. We have organizations represented in our attendees today, which is over 150 people, coming from national, regional, and continental levels, different levels of what you would call your societal needs and agendas. From your perspective, what are some of the key issues and needs you've observed and you've put out, all of you have put out who you affiliated with? So you've worked some journeys and you've seen things. So in your observations, what are the issues and the needs that you've observed for capacity development on Earth observations to support development outcomes? What is it that we need to do better in order for us to say Earth observations support national development needs? Gentlemen, I'm not going to repeat this question. This question is actually for all of you panelists, but I'm going to start with Phebe, and I'm going to walk my way back to Philip. Go ahead, Phebe, please.
Yes, so where to start is when it comes with the issue of tech, that will keep changing. So we must be ready to embrace that continuous learning. You don't know everything because it keeps changing, so you have to always keep learning, keep training, have small packages of solutions that address and keep training your staff on that. The second thing we have to embrace, especially when it comes to governance, is this need for having evidence-based decision-making. And this is where space technology and Earth observation come in very handy, because with space technology, you do not need to defend something. It's already giving the decision makers proof of what is existing and what is not and what needs to be done. The other thing is that we need to keep looking at how do we make it affordable. The challenges we have today as far as Earth observation is concerned is not the same as what was there previously. Right now we have Digital Earth Africa, which is making data readily accessible, easily accessible too, and it's also very affordable because we're accessing this data right from the internet. Back then we had to buy this data. So solutions are becoming much more affordable. The infrastructure also is changing. We don't have to have a whole big room of very big computers to do the processing, because a lot of that is happening on the cloud. The other thing that we also must consider is the minute we have needs-based solution, then it becomes easy to sell the idea of using more space technology and Earth observation to address development challenges, because we're responding to something that is relatable to people. For instance, what Digital Earth is producing for walks is already something people can relate with. You're able to show even the common person how your water has been behaving, because they've already had these experiences, but they cannot explain it. So once you have something that they can see without too many questions and understand how the performance of the environment is, it becomes much easier to be able to adopt this solution.
There's a number of packed insights and in the statements and the interventions you just made, Phebe. And time allowing, we're going to come back to some of those. Philip, talk to us. Where are we coming short?
So I'll go into my big three again. The memo still applies to this one. So I think the first thing is language. And the challenge with technical people is we seem to stick to our technicalities, assuming that we are talking to ourselves. And so by language itself, we kind of then, kind of marginalize people who we think would want to use these technologies, but also not even to use the technology themselves, but the outcomes of it, whether it's for policy and decision-making process, for policymakers, but even at the granular level, for farmers who really want to access simply weather data. They don't need to understand whether it's GEOs, CEOs, or NASA or whatever. So I think language needs to be simplified, which means we must engage other communities that can communicate better than we can do. The second thing I think for me is access, right? Meet people where they are. This is literally space science. So how do you ensure that it's broken down into levels where people can access the products without necessarily understanding or without us bothering them with what is under the hood? So I get the Jupyter notebooks, I get everything, but to a common man, a Jupyter notebook, I start to think Jupyter the planet, right? But if it's simply understanding illegal mining, simple, right? So how do we ensure that we can create that kind of access, whether it's through mobile phones or through tools that people have? The third piece, of course, is integrating it with other subject matter experts. We cannot separate geospatial and Earth observations from subject matter, whether it's health, whether it's agriculture, whether it's planning, because we've made it so highly specialized, then we disconnect it from subject matter experts. So my sense is that integrate it. And so in a way that then it's demystified and simplified over time, when people are learning their subject, Earth observations is part of that core. That's it.
I'm gonna make a rule, these three things here, because I see it's like it's really working. It's really working. Andre, I'm sure now you've worked your own three now. You've seen that this memo is how this thing is going. So talk to us, Andre. You are one of those people who've just been around the geospatial community in Africa for a long time. And what's at the top of your mind right now with regards to the issues and the needs when we come to talking about building Earth observations capacity?
Okay, thank you so much. There are several issues which lead to many needs in terms of capacity development on Earth observation, but let me pick some few among topical priorities or needs, information and technical infrastructure, and also governance and policy related issues. In terms of topical issues, my sense is that as we stand today, we tend to produce and disseminate Earth observation data rather than scientific and information product. In fact, we now need what we call in the geospatial arena, especially enable government services, meaning that time is now to rather deliver and produce services rather than providing raw data. And from my point of view, in terms of topical related need, the critical point for us is to ensure that we have a kind of ubiquitous readiness of information in terms of availability, accessibility, and usages, or the way we transform the data information to decision making. In terms of infrastructure, technical infrastructure, one of the main issues we still have in Africa is that more often we have a technology push programs, meaning that this leads to a kind of duplication or redundancy with multiplied number of Earth observation programs in the continent. maybe it's time for us to start reflecting on how forms must follow function, meaning that we need to clearly outline and define what we want, and then we organize ourselves around responding to our need. So my understanding there is that still we need a robust communication infrastructure to facilitate data exchange, data sharing, most importantly, between African countries before we go outside. And the third point I want to raise is in terms of governance and policy related issue. Although Africa has now its own space policy that describe its objectives and strategy for utilization and getting access to space, I believe that we still lag behind in terms of moving into an effective implementation of this policy and this strategy, so that we can continue to enhance the coordination mechanism between different initiatives in Earth observation. This is where maybe we can strengthen the impact of each initiative and ensure that we reduce at the maximum extent redundancy, duplications, and mutualize resources and capability. So one issue mentioned during the previous presentation is the lack of data access policy and regulatory frameworks for the ethical use of Earth observation data. Maybe this is also an issue that need to be looked at critically from the entire Earth observation community in Africa. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andre. So Tideane, let me come to you, sir.
Thank you, Andiswa. I would say that my work has been made easy by Andre with his last intervention. I would like to cover 4 areas quickly. The governance being the first, policy and strategy the second, programmatic area the third, and the fourth is awareness, raising awareness. I would say for the governance one, you can see that in Africa, when you go to African countries, in terms of accountability, the power or the mandate are scattered. In terms of, for example, producing EO services or information or product, when you go to a specific country, you will see several players who is accountable for what. That is something on which we need to work to have more impact in terms of accountability, to know who's doing what. That is important. The second point is policy and strategy. Andre talked about the data sharing policy. I would add on that the fact that every single EO project should address a priority, and the priority should be aligned with the national or regional or continental priorities. If you want policy the decision makers, the policy makers, to fund your initiative, to invest in your project should be able to address their needs, their priorities. That is very important. The third one is the program. And before even the program, at the strategic level, we should be able to align initiatives, because there are several initiatives in Africa. Sometimes they are similar, they are overlapping, and even they are duplicating. Strategically, we should be able to align with the existing similar initiatives in such a way we optimize our investment in terms of money, in terms of resources, etc. The third point, which is program. That is very important. Under the program, I will underline 3 things: infrastructure and data. We know Africa needs a lot of infrastructure, but sometimes you realize that an institution can share its infrastructure with other institutions which don't have this, the said infrastructure, but it doesn't happen. In terms of data access, in addition to the data sharing policy, we also have the fact that most of the institutions are not very well equipped to be able to access several types of data. That is very important to look at. Secondly, the services approach. We have to move from the traditional way of doing business in the EO community to the new way of doing business, which is service development. What does it mean? We have the tendency, our community, to produce maps, graphics, etc., and we think we are addressing problems. No, we have to shift for the new paradigm, which is to involve the stakeholders and end users from the beginning of the project, to team with them. Because while we are developing the concept, we move forward together and they can help us to better address the things. So what we call the SDP, for example, under GMSS Africa is a service development plan. We should have that. And the last thing is the training under the program. In Africa, we need to train a critical mass, meaning young people should be trained. And there are 3 types of training we should consider, for example. The online training, the classroom training, the on-the-job training. Whatever we do, we have to reach the maximum of young people because they are the future. And we have to be able to allow them to cover all the streams from the infrastructure to the applications and etc. The last one is awareness. We have to continue informing, engaging our decision makers in such a way they understand that Earth observation is adding values in what they want to achieve. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tideane. And Tideane, I'm actually going to pick on some of the things that you started talking about to move the panel forward in this conversation. You talked about under the programmatic level. You started talking about there's a number of initiatives and activities that are happening in the continent. And the question I have is, in recognizing that there is a lot of things that are happening across the continent, across multiple organizations. I mean, I've been in spaces where an organization has so many programs itself that are not talking to each other in the same organization. And all of this related to the use of satellite data. How do we better align, leverage, harmonize these efforts to more collectively build capacity and impact? And maybe what I would appreciate, because this is talking with Digital Earth Africa we're brought here by Digital Earth Africa, is to maybe also consider from where you are sitting. You mentioned GMES and Africa. Where you are sitting, how can Digital Earth Africa and GMES Africa illustrate this leveraging, this harmonizing, this complementarity that we're talking about, and the reduction of duplication? Thank you
very much. Thank you very much, Andiswa. And I would say Digital Earth Africa and GMS has already started working together. For example, African Union Commission is part of the board of Digital Earth. I would say, before coming back to the specific, I would say, to be able to leverage or to harmonize, we have to look at, again, the 4 angles I was talking about. At the governance level. At the governance level, we have to be able to sit together to look at the same direction and to make some decisions that can be implemented at the programmatic level. That is one thing. This is why the African Union Commission, I'm representing on the board of Digital Earth Africa. And it will be vice versa also. For the GMS second phase, we are looking for bringing, the appropriate person from the Digital Earth Africa to be part of the Policy Coordination and Advisory Committee of GMS. Therefore, at the governance level, we will be on the same wavelength. At the programmatic level, for example, today, we are doing joint activities together. And this is the kind of things to encourage. I would say we will share our work plan, the yearly work plan with Digital Earth Africa, for example, and vice versa, and we look at how we complement each other and how we do activities in such a way we optimize our investments. The third one, at the policy and strategy level, and that is very important. We African Union Commission, we have the mandate on behalf of the member state to look at the continental programs, to work with all partners. What we'll do with Digital Earth Africa is to say, okay, we are doing that at the continental level, how together at the policy and strategy level, we can work together. Again, the training is the same. We have to be able to develop, it is clear that there will be some vertical issues. That is normal in each program, but where we will have opportunity to integrate, we have to. And this is why your question is more than relevant, because that is one of the vision of the Africa, the Agenda 2063, an integrated Africa. It is very important. We have to do things together. We have to start from the governance through the policy until the programmatic.
Wonderful. What I appreciate with that response is again this connection to the issues that you've identified and high level, because we can take that framework and apply it throughout any initiatives anyway in the continent. But then you brought it home, because ultimately it's those concrete actions that give us the proof that we are coordinating. I'm going to play a little bit of a game here. I'm going to try to mix match the questions that I really want the panel to answer, and also bring in some of the questions that are coming from the industry. You see, I'm already thinking about my next question now, from the questions that are coming from the panel. Philip, again, we're talking about these leveraging initiatives and harmonizing initiatives. And one of the things that you talked about before was around other experts, right? There is a domain that is the industry domain, the private sector domain. And I happen to know you have a passion for this particular community. And one of the questions that is coming from the audience is how do we engage with industry in the use of Earth observations? Specifically, one example says, how does a bank's IT person readily get needed capacity to build a prototype solution to let the bank develop finance products to serve smallholder farmers? Let me go back to tech. You get so no,
understand it.
You understand it, right? You said experts. You said connect with the experts. Here's an IT person.
Exactly. So and again, an IT person who's pushed us into another jargon and their language, right? So again, I'll frame it in this way, right? Because then also the IT expert and the bank is also looking at their silo within the financial system, right? But then also we must include everybody within that value chain, including small and medium enterprises, right? So again, for me, then it becomes that notion of agility. Because Digital Earth Africa and these technologies, I know we haven't gone into the jargon of it, and I don't want to get lost into that. We're also leveraging on the capability of these new emerging technologies, right? Whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's even the new modes of learning. So my sense is that with this particular technology, we can customize what we call executive education for people like the banks, because this is very industry specific. But then you can extrapolate from one bank to any other bank that works with people within the food system. So I like to look at it as food systems. The reason why I said we need to connect it with industry players is also because we are seeing how learning and knowledge has been imparted, even with that sector, must change because of technology and things like Digital Earth Africa, right? So including how do you price? So he's looking at smallholder farmers. I'm also looking at, for example, in Kenya, the work we're doing with insurance, which we know how Earth observations can impact how you provide insurance products, but also it can impact how you how you fund or provide subsidies for smallholder farmers. Anyway, so that's potentially my quick answer. But I look at, from the private sector, right? I look at also these other three perspectives. One is, of course, because for private sector, it might be value for money. But then how do we also ensure that there's a value for development on the other spectrum of the smallholder farmer? This is why, for me, that integration of science also means that we must inject that development value, because tomorrow they will not have a client if there's no value for development within that space. The other bit also is because the bank is just one piece. You need other services to ring fence that farmer. Then that creates a value chain, which can be offered by Earth observations, because there are many products that can move from farm to fork, whether it's logistics, whether it's understanding markets, whether it's understanding long-term, short-term weather patterns, whether it's having time series data, right, that influences that. So that agility can be provided by a smallholder medium enterprise. So again, going to the previous point around governance, on how people decide which value chain to support. The third piece, of course, is resiliency. How do you go beyond this programmatic approach to something that is more holistic? And because Earth observations give you that per second, day to day kind of ability to see data through different dimensions, I feel this is something that the continent needs and could actually be something that the private sector would want, because then private sector needs consistency. Private sector, that's what drives private sector. Consistency. If you can't get it, I think EO can provide that. Over.
Consistency yes. For resilience.
Yes.
It's one of the things that we undersell about the power of Earth observations. And correctly so. For industry and for farmers, this is one of the powerful aspects for me for Earth observations when we're talking agriculture. The fact that you can have this consistent data, you can start talking about reliability of the information that you've got, and you can start building resilient mechanisms for your agriculture development and your farming. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Philip. I do hope the question that the individual participant who asked that question feels that they are answered. And maybe I could add it also this way, that IT person can join the 6-week training course that was presented earlier on by Kenneth, and they can have Kenneth and his team there to hold their hands, help them with the algorithms. Failing which, there's going to come a point with Digital Earth Africa where you're going to find solutions that are developed by other SMEs to service your specific niche. So you can also just go and buy it instead of trying to do it for yourself in the IT space. Partner with someone who knows how to do this coding in this environment, and you have your solution. So with that, I'm going to move to Phebe. Phebe, I'm still on this notion on how we leverage and harmonize. And you sitting as a regional center for mapping of resources for development. What does Digital Earth Africa mean to RCMRD, to the AfriGeo initiative, to the Sevilla initiative, that these are the responsibility areas you mentioned in your introduction? Where does Digital Earth Africa fit into this in the concept of harmonization, leveraging, and working together? Did I lose Phoebe?
Yes, I'm here. So,
oh, perfect.
For us as an institution, we're happy with Digital Earth Africa because it's about Africa. So what we want to see is that the solutions that are driving Digital Earth Africa are things that are affecting Africans. That the people they are working with are local partners, and the skills are actually being impacted on local people. So we are already seeing a lot of that just based on the training concept and some of the training skills that have already been started, but we want to see more of that. In terms of partnerships, we want to see more regional representation in terms of this. These are the implementing partners. I think I've seen a couple of them, but in terms of that regional representation, that also needs to come out very clearly because the different regions have different priority challenges. The other thing that I also would like to see Digital Earth Africa addressing is that they match those needs with the national priorities. Each and every country has a different national priority, and then also see how we can be able to downscale those solutions. So part of what is interesting with Stella's presentation is exactly this downscaling that I'm talking about, because we have a digital art solution at a national level, and that is great at a regional level. But when we start seeing small scale communities and small scale people applying these solutions to address very specific needs that they have, then it is more interesting and more impactful. The other thing is we want to get assurance in terms of getting continuous access to data and getting an advanced supply. So right now we have the Landsat in there, the Sentinel, but there are also different data needs that needs to be looked at. So having those conversations with people to align the priority data that is required, and also just making sure that what is being produced is what is actually needed by the people. The other last thing is to make sure that access is not an issue, because yes, we can know about Digital Earth Africa just within this community. How do we continue to make sure that everybody who needs to get information, get access to whatever data is able to do that? So the evangelism is good, but we need to move also beyond the geo boundary and see that we are also talking to policy makers and making sure that the information is acted in such a way that it is being delivered to everybody. Then the last one is this concept of being inclusive. So the inclusivity, it needs to be very apparent in terms of who we're working with and the people we are actually providing solutions for. So part of those gender inclusion is one thing, but not the implementation is something else that we also need to look at very critically.
I feel so cheated because Aditya just told me that we are almost up with time, and I feel like we were just warming up to this, you know, we're just really warming up to this, and so I am going to apologize to the panel. Andre, I do want to hear from UNECA, because as I mentioned before, we've been walking this path with UNECA for years, the spatial data infrastructure, and you know, like it's been a journey, UNGGIM Africa, and now we've got Digital Earth Africa, and I would like you to tell us in terms of, are all these things separated, or do they harmonize at some point? You know, are we belonging to different camps, or there is a place of intersection between these initiatives? And I'm asking now, as you know, I've been walking the same path with you, but am I just spreading myself too thin, or there is something that brings us together as these different initiatives, specifically around Digital Earth Africa, what UNECA has been driving over the years and continues to drive. So that in that question, Andre, I would also just like you to maybe, no, actually, I'm not going to do this. Let me take that question, and then I'm going to ask the panelists to close off for me. In your close off, you're going to be very brave. No 3. I challenge the memo on 3, okay? Unless when you go with your 3, you're not going to qualify them, right? You're just going to say, okay? So what I would like to know in the closing, just like we started, I would just like you to tell me what did Aditya do? So Aditya has done something for me here. So Aditya, I'm going to come back to you just now, panelists. Andre, please take the floor for us and tell us, how is Digital Earth Africa bringing in?
Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you very clearly, Andre. Thank you.
Can you hear me? I have the sense that I lost the connection.
No, we can hear you very clearly. but it seems like you cannot hear us. So does that mean you cannot hear us? Can someone else try to speak to Andre and see if Andre would hear them?
Hello, Andre.
Okay, so we've lost Andre. That is a pity. That is a pity that we've for us to lose Andre. But nonetheless, what maybe I would be looking for then is maybe closing remarks from the panelists, because as I said, we have run out of time, unfortunately, with our discussion, as much as I was still just enjoying that. So my panel members, if in your closing, you could just tell us briefly, what would success look like to you? And I think this is the question that I had also asked of Joost before, because it is always good for us to know what is it that we're looking for, so that when we see it, we know that we've arrived. So if you could just have one thing happen, just one thing happen, that will take us to success, what would that accelerator be? The accelerator for success, what would that accelerator be? With everything else you've listed saying needs to happen, with all the issues you've identified, I need you to just pick one and say, for me, this is it. Tideane.
I knew you would start with me.
I have to start with the man with the most cars. What else can I do? Huh?
It shows people that you love me so much.
I'm showing all my cards now.
The cars are on the road. The COVID stopped them. Anyway, I would say only one thing from my side. If we succeed engaging decision makers to use Earth observation for planning, implementation, development, or all kinds of policies and programs, it will be bingo. All other kind of things will come after. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Philip.
If we can manage to entice small and medium enterprises to take an interest in Earth observations, because we've seen what they've done in other sectors, whether it's fintech, whether it's in mobile money, whether it's in, we've seen it. And this is a multi-million-dollar industry on their own. So they don't need money. We just need to interest them on the capability of Earth observations, because we need transformation at massive scale and at granular level and through innovation. So that's my one thing, SMEs.
Entice the SMEs, engage the decision makers. I like how this is framing it, and I think I can hear what Phebe has there. Phebe, we need a third element of this will.
Yes, mine is very similar to what Tideane says, but I call it adoption. And
you call it?
I'm saying mine is very similar to what Tideane had. For me, I call it adoption. So if we can be able to adopt this regionally, nationally, at whatever level, where we're using Earth observation to address most of the problems that can be addressed with Earth observation, for me, that is a success. And the last one is to defer you back to the 3 T's of sustained capacity. It could be transferable, translatable, and transformation.
Ladies and gentlemen of the panel, thank you very much for your time. Philip, Tideane, Phebe, and Andre in absentia. Sorry, we lost Andre. Thank you very much for that. That was a wonderful conversation for me. Very nice insights. I was typing the notes like mad. And to the Participants, thank you for the questions, and I do apologize we didn't get to answer all the questions, but once Aditya is closing off, I'm going to try and answer some of the questions that I saw come up. Okay, thank you. Thank you, members.
Thanks, Andiswa.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Andiswa.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Aditya.
Just wow. I mean, that was just such a great panel. So to all my brothers and sisters on the panel, just thank you for all of your insights. That was a great discussion. And as always, Andiswa, thank you for your excellent moderation of that panel. I'm sorry to be the one that's the bearer of the bad news, but we are out of time. So sorry, we could have, I think, had that panel go for at least another hour. But we will be doing follow-up, so hopefully there's another opportunity to engage. One thing that I'd like to say is, just looking at all the comments and questions that are coming in through this webinar, one thing that kind of strikes me there is that there's an ecosystem here, that there's a number of institutions, programs, initiatives that are all trying to make better use of these types of data and deliver the type of impact that we all want to be able to deliver. So we need to try to align, to synergize, and really work as a community to be able to deliver the type of impact that really makes things move in the direction that we want them to move. Matt, can we just go to the next slide really quick? Or the previous slide, I guess. Or no, I guess this is the last slide, sorry. So we will, we'll be making this presentation available. We'll be getting all of this information up on a YouTube. We'll also be sending around a report in relation to the questions that were submitted by all of the participants. And for all the participants, thank you for your attendance, and to the speakers previous to the panel on the presentations. Thank you for your excellent presentations. I'd like to hand it over to Adam Lewis now to give the last word.
Oh, thank you, Aditya. Look, I feel it's just an absolute privilege for us to have provided this webinar, and who would have guessed with such a panel that it could possibly run out of time. For me, hearing from Ken and Edward and Stella in particular gives me a grounding, and it gives me confidence that our shared time is being well spent, that we're on the right track. And I look forward to hearing of literally tens and maybe hundreds of use cases as the capability is taken up and applied in new and valuable ways. I do want to acknowledge that this whole capability is the result of many contributors. It's a series of partners. We work in an international context where GEO plays a key role, and we're a community activity of GEO. The data providers, in particular the European Commission, the European Space Agency, and the United States Geological Survey, and the open data policies of those governments, they create the possibility for DE Africa. And the space agencies coordinate through the International Committee on Earth Observing Satellites, and that makes available analysis-ready data. And through GMES, headed up in Africa by the AUC, and Tideane has spoken about that. There's support from many partners. We've heard from ITC and the University of Twente, who lead the CD, the capacity development work. Our partnership with Amazon Web Services is bringing data to Africa in the cloud. We're working with Servier and linking to capabilities that they've developed, and we're leveraging the Open Data Cube. And most importantly, our implementing partners, and Joost spoke about them in some detail. However, to quote Joost, success lies in impact on the ground, and the most important and complicated and rewarding link in this chain is the expertise across Africa to leverage the data and the technology, and to sustain it, that we've been able to apply, and to assure that we can apply it to good ends. And that's where this webinar and capacity development is so important. Tideane spoke of pillars of infrastructure, which we know is possible, but it can always improve, and of human capital and critical mass, where our capacity development programs are coming to. Those two pillars will allow us to create value across sectors. And if we can deliver value, then finance, that third pillar, will continue and will follow. I think we've all attended webinars this year. It's been a year of inventing webinars, let's face it, in 2020. But certainly this is the best I've seen, and that's even putting my biases aside. I'm really actually looking forward to reviewing the recording. I want to personally thank Aditya and the organising team, all of our speakers, Ken, Edward, Stella, Joost, and the panel, Andiswa, Tideane, Phebe, Philip, and Andre for investing your time and efforts and insights to make this a great success. We've reached 140 applicants, and I think we have to regard that as a success of participants. So thank you everyone for your participation, and I trust this webinar will be useful to you. Thank you, Aditya.
Great, thanks so much, Adam. That was a great summary. And with that, I think we will conclude. Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you again to all the speakers and panelists for your participation. Bye-bye.
Bye.